Right now, while you're listening to this, the global financial system is unraveling. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like ice cracking beneath your feet. For 50 years, every time you filled your gas tank, you participated in the most powerful economic agreement in modern history. You didn't know it, most people don't, but that agreement just ended, and your grocery bill knows it. Your rent knows it. Your savings account definitely knows it. March 2024, a date that will echo through economic history. Saudi Arabia let a 50-year contract expire. No renewal, no extension. The petrodollar died. And if you're wondering why everything suddenly costs more, why your paycheck doesn't stretch like it used to, this is where the story begins. To understand what just happened, we need to go back, not just decades. We need to understand how empires have controlled money for centuries. Because what we're watching isn't new. It's a pattern, and the pattern is ancient. See, throughout history, the most powerful force wasn't military strength. It was currency control. Whoever decides what money is worth controls everything. Rome knew this, Britain knew this, and America knew this better than anyone. But here's what they don't teach in schools. Every currency empire follows the same arc. First, dominance, then overconfidence, then cracks, then collapse. The timeline changes, technology changes, but the pattern never changes. And we just hit stage 4. Let me take you back to August 15th, 1971. President Nixon stands before television cameras. He's about to break a promise that defined global finance since World War II. The promise was simple. Every $35 could be exchanged for 1 ounce of gold. That promise created trust. That trust created power. Nixon ends it just like that. The gold standard is gone. The dollar is now backed by nothing but faith. And America needs a new plan. Fast. The world is watching. Oil-producing nations are furious. They've been selling oil for dollars they thought were backed by gold. Now those dollars are just paper, just promises. And promises can be broken. This is where the real story begins. June 1974, a secret meeting in Saudi Arabia, U.S. Treasury officials and Saudi royals negotiate behind closed doors. The deal they make will reshape global economics for the next 50 years. It's brilliant, it's unprecedented, and it just ended. Here's what they agreed. Saudi Arabia will sell oil only in US dollars, not gold, not yen, not euros, only dollars. Every nation that wants oil, which is every nation, needs dollars to buy it. In exchange, America provides military protection, weapons, security guarantees, technology, source, U.S. Treasury Department, declassified documents. 1974. Think about what this means. Imagine if every time you bought groceries, you had to use a currency controlled by one family. That family prints more whenever they want. That family never runs out. And you have to keep earning that currency, holding that currency, trusting that currency. Because without it, you can't eat. That was the petrodollar system. Every country on earth needed dollars to buy oil, so they kept dollars in reserve. They bought U.S. Treasury bonds. They accepted dollars for exports. The demand was artificial, but it was total. America could print dollars without consequence because the world needed those dollars to survive. It was the most elegant economic trap in history, and it worked. For 50 years, it worked perfectly. The dollar became the global reserve currency, not because it was backed by gold, but because it was backed by oil, black gold, liquid power, the one commodity every modern economy demands. Your gas tank is part of this system. Every gallon you pump connects to treasury bonds, to federal spending, to the military budget. It's all linked, one massive, intricate machine, and the machine just lost its engine. Let me show you how this pattern has played out before, because it has, multiple times. Same stages, same warnings, same ending. Rome, 235 AD. The empire stretches from Britain to Egypt. Unshakable, invincible at least. That's what they thought. The Roman denarius is the world's reserve currency. Every merchant from Londinium to Jerusalem uses it. Rome controls trade because Rome controls money, but the empire is expensive. Endless wars, massive bureaucracy, infrastructure spanning a continent. The cost is crushing. So Rome makes a choice. They debase the currency. The silver denarius used to be 95% pure silver. By 260 AD, it's down to 5%. They're printing money, ancient style, by adding cheap metals to valuable coins. Source: The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon Merchants. Notice immediately, they raise prices. If the coins are worth less, they need more coins. Inflation spirals. By 301 AD, prices had increased by 1,000%. 1,000%. A loaf of bread that cost 1 denarius now costs 10. But here's the detail that should terrify you. The Roman government didn't think it was a problem. Not at first. They thought they could control it, manage it. They issued price controls, laws fixing the cost of goods, penalties for merchants who raised prices. It didn't work. It never works, because you can't legislate away economic reality. Marcus was a grain merchant in Rome. He'd worked for 40 years, built a business, saved in denarii. When the crisis hit, his savings became worthless. Everything he'd built vanished. Not because he made bad choices, because the empire made bad choices, and he paid the price. The collapse took decades, but the pattern was set. Currency debasement leads to inflation. Inflation leads to loss of purchasing power. Loss of purchasing power leads to social chaos. Social chaos leads to political collapse. This pattern didn't die with Rome. 7 centuries later, it would repeat in Spain. Same trap, different empires. 1500s, Spanish conquistadors discover silver mountains in the Americas. Potosi, Bolivia, the richest silver deposit ever found. Ships filled with silver cross the Atlantic. Tons of it, endless wealth pouring into Spain. Spain is rich, obscenely rich. The Spanish real becomes the dominant trade currency. Spanish power seems eternal. King Philip II controls an empire where the sun never sets. But here's what nobody saw coming. All that silver causes inflation. Massive inflation. When you flood a market with money, money becomes less valuable. Basic economics. But empires forget basic economics. Source: The Ascent of Money by Niall Ferguson between 1500 and 1650. Prices in Spain increased by 400%. Your rent today going up 25% feels crushing. Imagine it quadrupling. Imagine everything quadrupling. Spanish workers can't afford food. The empire is rich in silver, but poor in purchasing power. And here's the tragic irony. The more silver Spain imported, the worse things got. They were drowning in wealth while starving. It's like having $1 million in a currency nobody values. You're rich on paper, broke in reality. Maria lived in Madrid, 1590. Her husband was a soldier. He sent silver coins home from the Americas. She watched those coins buy less every month. Bread, clothes, firewood, everything doubled, then doubled again. She wasn't poor, the money was poor. By 1650, Spain's golden age was over. The empire begins its long decline. The pattern repeats. Currency overproduction leads to inflation. Inflation destroys purchasing power, and the people suffer. Fast forward to November 1923. Weimar Germany. This is the collapse everyone remembers, the one that's taught in history classes. But even in those classes, they don't tell you what it felt like. They don't tell you about Johann. Johann was a teacher. I am 43 years old, married, 3 children. He'd saved his entire adult life. Responsible, prudent. He had 300,000 marks in the bank, a fortune. Enough for retirement, enough for his children's education, enough for security. Then came the hyperinflation. Germany had lost World War I. War reparations were crushing. The government's solution: print money. Print more money. Print money faster than anyone had ever printed money before. In January 1923, a loaf of bread cost 250 marks. By November, it cost 200 billion marks. 200 billion. Source: When Money Dies by Adam Ferguson, people carried money in wheelbarrows. Not metaphorically, literally. They needed wheelbarrows because the cash was so voluminous. There's a famous photograph. Thieves stole the wheelbarrow and left the cash. The wheelbarrow had value. The cash didn't. Johann's 300,000 marks bought 1 loaf of bread. 40 years of savings. 1 loaf of bread, his retirement vanished. His children's future vanished. Everything he'd worked for became worthless in 11 months. 11 months. Your grocery bill jumped 30% in 2 years, and it hurt. Johann's grocery bill increased by 80 million%. Try to comprehend that number? You can't. Nobody can. That's the point. Hyperinflation destroys not just wealth, but the ability to understand value. And here's what connects Johann to you: the pattern. Germany didn't plan to create hyperinflation. They thought they could manage it, control it, print just enough to pay debts. But inflation is like fire. You think you're controlling it, then it controls you. The Weimar collapse had consequences that stretched far beyond economics. The chaos, the suffering, the desperation created conditions for extremism. By 1933, a new government promised stability, order. They delivered something much darker. This pattern continued. Each time, a new empire. Same mistake. October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday. The U.S. stock market crashes. Not just a dip, a collapse. In one day, investors lose $14 billion. That's $230 billion in today's money. Source: Federal Reserve Historical Data, 1929, but the crash itself wasn't the real disaster. It was what came after. Bank runs, credit freeze, economic paralysis. By 1933, unemployment hit 25%. 1 in 4 Americans can't find work. Breadlines stretch 4 blocks. Families lose homes, farms foreclosed, savings wiped out. Your student loan feels overwhelming. Imagine 25% unemployment. Imagine no jobs anywhere. Imagine everyone you know struggling simultaneously. That's what happens when the financial system breaks. Margaret lived in Oklahoma, 1932. Dust Bowl conditions destroyed her farm. She'd borrowed money to buy equipment, expecting to repay with harvest profits. Then came the drought. Then came depression. The bank foreclosed. She lost everything, not because she was lazy or stupid, because the system collapsed around her. The pattern appears again. Financial instability leads to credit contraction. Credit contraction leads to business failures. Business failures lead to unemployment. Unemployment leads to suffering. Notice what's happening here. Same 3 stages. Every single time. Stage 1, currency or credit expansion. Stage 2, loss of confidence. Stage 3, collapse and suffering. The details change. The pattern doesn't. August 1971. We've already talked about Nixon ending the gold standard, but here's what happened next. Inflation. Serious inflation. The 1970s saw oil shocks, price increases, and economic chaos called stagflation. Unemployment and inflation are rising simultaneously. That's not supposed to happen, but it did. Source: Bureau of Labor Statistics Historical Data, 1970 to 1980, gas lines formed. People waited hours to fill their tanks. Prices doubled, then doubled again. If you were alive then, you remember. If you weren't, ask your parents. They remember. That crisis created the petrodollar system. America needed to stabilize the dollar without gold backing. Oil became the new anchor. Brilliant, temporary, and now finished. Let's jump to 1986. Japan, the land of the rising sun, is rising, indeed. The Japanese economy is booming. Tokyo real estate prices skyrocket. The Imperial Palace grounds in Tokyo are theoretically worth more than all of California. More than California. Think about that absurdity. Source: Princes of the Yen by Richard Werner. Japanese citizens feel wealthy. They buy art, luxury goods. International properties. The Nikkei stock index reached 38,915 in December 1989, a peak that seems eternal. Then comes 1991, the bubble pops. Asset prices collapse. The Nikkei falls to 14,000, banks fail, companies collapse. And here's the haunting part. Japan still hasn't recovered. The Nikkei didn't reach 1989 levels again until 2024. 35 years, an entire generation lost. Takeshi was a Tokyo salaryman. He bought a small apartment in 1989, borrowed heavily. The apartment cost $500,000. By 1995, it was worth $150,000. He still owed $500,000. Underwater, trapped, he paid for 30 years on an asset worth a fraction of his debt. Your mortgage feels heavy. Imagine paying for 30 years on a house worth less than you owe. No escape, no solution. Just decades of payments for nothing. That pattern didn't stop in Japan. It came to America, September 15, 2008. Lehman Brothers collapses. A 158-year-old investment bank vanishes overnight. $600 billion in assets. gone. Source: Federal Reserve Crisis Timeline. 2008, the financial crisis spreads globally. Housing markets crash, stock markets plummet. Your parents' retirement accounts probably lost 40% of value in 6 months. 6 months. Years of saving cut in half. But here's what you need to understand. 2008 happened because of currency manipulation. The Federal Reserve kept interest rates artificially low. Easy money, cheap credit. People borrowed to buy houses they couldn't afford. Banks lent to people who couldn't repay. Everyone thought prices would rise forever. They didn't. Jennifer was a nurse in Phoenix. She bought a house in 2006 for $350,000. Adjustable rate mortgage seemed fine. 2 years later, her payment doubled. She couldn't afford it. She tried to sell. The house was worth $180,000. She walked away. Foreclosure, credit destroyed. She'd been responsible. The system wasn't. Your credit card debt feels manageable until interest rates spike. Ask Jennifer how fast things change. The pattern echoes currency manipulation. Leads to asset bubbles. Asset bubbles lead to crashes. Crashes lead to human suffering. Same stages, different decade. And we're not done. The pattern continues. 2020, COVID pandemic hits. Global lockdowns, economic paralysis. Governments respond by printing money. Massive stimulus, trillions of dollars. The money supply explodes. In 2020, the M2 money supply in the US increases by 25% in 1 year. 25%. Source: Federal Reserve Economic Data. 2020, that's the fastest peacetime monetary expansion in American history. Everyone gets stimulus checks. Businesses get bailouts, markets boom. Stock prices hit records, while businesses close. It feels wrong because it is wrong. You're printing money to solve a supply crisis. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Then comes 2022. Inflation. Serious inflation. The kind that makes your grocery trips painful. Eggs that cost $2.50 in 2020 cost $6 in 2023. Source: USDA Price Index. 2023 milk, bread, meat. Everything jumps 30% to 50%. Your paycheck doesn't keep up. Average wage growth 2022-2023, 12%. Average inflation, 18%. Source: Bureau of Labor Statistics. 2023, you're losing purchasing power. You're working harder and falling behind. That's not random. That's the pattern playing out in real time. David is a delivery driver in Denver. 2020, he earned $45,000. 2023, he earns $50,000. Sounds like progress, but his rent went from $1,200 to $1,800. His groceries doubled. His gas tripled. He's making more money and living worse. The math doesn't work. That's what currency debasement does, not to governments, to you, and now we arrive at the present moment. The moment when the petrodollar system ended, March 2024, Saudi Arabia announces they will not renew the 50-year petrodollar agreement. Oil can now be purchased in yuan, euros, yen, or any currency. Source: Bloomberg Financial Report, March 2024. This is massive. For 50 years, global oil trade required dollars. That requirement created artificial demand for dollars. That demand allowed America to print money with fewer consequences. Those days are ending. China immediately begins buying oil in yuan. India negotiates rupee payments. Brazil uses reals. The dollar's monopoly is breaking, and when monopolies break, prices adjust. Since March 2024, the dollar index has fallen 8%. Source: US Dollar Index, Federal Reserve Data, 2024. That might not sound like much, but in currency markets, 8% is enormous. It means everything you buy from other countries just got 8% more expensive. Coffee, electronics, clothes, anything imported costs more. And here's what nobody's talking about. This is just the beginning. If oil can be traded in any currency, why hold dollars in reserve? Why buy treasury bonds? The demand for dollars will decrease. And when demand decreases, value decreases. Your savings account just became less valuable. Not because you spent money, because the dollar itself is worth less. Emma is a graphic designer in Austin. She has $30,000 saved. She's saving for a house down payment. In 2020, that $30,000 could buy 8% of a median Austin home. Today, it buys 4%. Source: Zillow Home Value Index, 2020 for her savings doubled. Her purchasing power halved. She's running on a treadmill that's speeding up. That's what happens when currency loses reserve status. You feel it in your daily life. Groceries, rent, gas, healthcare, student loan burdens. Everything costs more. Not because things changed, because money changed. And the pattern suggests this isn't over. When reserve currencies lose status, the transition is brutal. Britain learned this after World War II. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency for a century. Then it wasn't. Britain faced decades of economic adjustment, austerity, decline. The empire that ruled the world became just another country. America isn't an empire, but the dollar is, and empires fall. 5 currencies have held global reserve status in the last 500 years. Portuguese real, Spanish real, Dutch guilder, British pound, American dollar. Source: International Monetary Fund Historical Review, 2018. Notice the pattern. Each one seemed permanent, unshakable, until it wasn't. So here's what we know. Currency dominance is temporary. The pattern repeats. Expansion leads to overconfidence. Overconfidence leads to overextension. Overextension leads to crisis. Crisis leads to collapse. Rome debased currency. Spain flooded markets with silver. Weimar printed to oblivion. America printed to solve problems. The method changes, the outcome doesn't. Right now, as you listen to this, central banks worldwide are reducing dollar reserves. China holds $775 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. 5 years ago, it was $1.2 trillion. Source: U.S. Treasury International Capital Data, 2024. They're selling, diversifying, preparing for a post-dollar world. Your mortgage is in dollars. Your savings are in dollars. Your paycheck is in dollars. When the world needs fewer dollars, those dollars buy less. You don't need to understand monetary policy to feel the effects. You just need to buy groceries. This isn't about fear, it's about patterns. History gives us one advantage. We can see what's coming. The Romans couldn't, the Spanish couldn't, the Germans couldn't, but we can. We have centuries of data. We know the pattern. Stage 1, currency dominance. Stage 2, Stage 4, loss of confidence. Stage 5, adjustment. Stage 6, collapse. We're between Stage 4 and 5. The question isn't if this will impact you. It already is. Your grocery receipt proves it. Your rent increase confirms it. Your stagnant paycheck validates it. The petrodollar system collapsed quietly. No dramatic announcement, no emergency broadcasts, just a contract expiring, a monopoly ending, a 50-year pattern breaking, and your wallet noticed before your brain did. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes. And right now, the rhyme is getting louder. The echoes are clear. 5 centuries of currency, empires, 5 collapses. Same stages, same warnings, same patterns. The dollar isn't disappearing tomorrow. Reserve currency transitions take decades, but they do happen. They always happen. The British pound didn't vanish, it just stopped being special. The Dutch guilder still exists, it just doesn't matter. That's what's coming, not apocalypse, adjustment. The painful, slow adjustment from exceptional to ordinary, from global reserve to regional currency, from printing without consequence to facing economic reality, and you'll feel it every time you swipe your card. So here's my question for you. When did you first notice things changing? Was it the grocery store, the gas pump, your rent, your savings, feeling smaller? Drop a comment. Tell me when the pattern became visible to you, because it's different for everyone, but it's happening to everyone. And in the next video, we're going deeper. We're going to explore the one move that could change everything. The decision no empire has ever made. The choice between controlled decline and catastrophic collapse, because we're not powerless, we just need to see clearly. If this made you think differently about the money in your account, hit subscribe. Every week, we uncover patterns. Every week, we connect history to your household. Every week, we see what's coming before it arrives. Thank you for watching this through. Thank you for thinking. Thank you for your question. That's how patterns break. That's how awareness begins. I'll see you in the next one.